Okay, so here we have a fish. This is about the size of the fish that I often catch. One little hint, if you're going to take a picture of a fish, okay, if you take the fish and you hold it away from yourself while you're being photographed with your catch, the fish will appear much, much larger. It's an optical illusion. If you hold the fish in here like this, it looks smaller. Hold it away from yourself, and you can make a small fish look pretty big. But that's really not what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about some fish anatomy. Okay? So, first thing, does anyone remember what we call this thing back here?
It's on the board behind you.
Oh, it is it?
Yeah.
So what is this thing right here?
Oh, now your head's in the way. Tail.
What is it, Connor?
The tail fin.
It's the tail fin, but there's another name for it.
The caudal fin.
The caudal fin, C-A-U-D-A-L, caudal fin. Caudal tends in anatomy means back, okay, or rear. So this is the caudal fin, all right? Now, how about this fin right down here? What do we call this one?
The anal fin.
The anal fin, okay? Very good, because it's near the fish's anus, which is usually right about there. What do we call this fin right here up by the fish's chest?
Pectoral fin.
The pectoral fin. That's a pectoral fin. All right? What do we call this fin up here on the back of the fish?
Dorsal fin.
The dorsal fin. And dorsal means back. On the human body, our back is the dorsal side of us. Okay, so this is dorsal. And then some fish have a couple of different dorsal fins. They often have what they call a spiny dorsal fin. And this one doesn't have actual spines, but there are some pictures of them. And some fish, there's not a spiny dorsal fin. There's another kind of fin that's really important, and we'll see a picture of it in a minute. But some fish have a little tiny fin that's mostly made of fat. It's called the adipose fin. Cold water species like salmon and trout have adipose fins. Warm water species like this bass do not have adipose fins. Okay, so we got all the fins done. What is this structure right here? Right here, this.
Those are gills, right?
What is that?
It's hard to tell.
What's under here if I open this up on a real fish?
Somebody else speak.
The gills. This is the gill plate. Okay? You open up the gill plate, and underneath here are the gills. So water goes through the fish's mouth and goes out through the gills, and as the water passes over the gills, it gives oxygen to the fish. Water has oxygen dissolved in it, and the fish can remove that dissolved oxygen through their gills. That's why fish don't have lungs. Right? Very good. So that's the major pieces of fish anatomy. You can stop. Okay, so now we're gonna look at this diagram to see some more anatomy. Here's the tail or caudal fin. We have a dorsal fin, the spiny dorsal fin on the back. Fish have scales on them. Some fish, like bass, the scales are large and they need to be removed before you eat the fish. So you can take a knife and you scrape against the grain of the scales. You scrape up the fish and the scales come off. Fish like salmon and trout, their scales are so small that you don't have to remove them. You can eat them with the skin of the fish. Also on the side of the fish, there's this thing called a lateral line. It's a really nice one here on the side of the bass, the lateral line of the fish. Many species have one that's pretty predominant. In some fish, they have sensory nerves along the lateral line that allow them to detect fish vibrations from prey and other fish in the water. Sharks use their lateral line as a way to detect prey. But that's the lateral line. Lateral means it goes down the side. The gill plate here is also called an aperculum. That's that plate that opens and closes. We got the upper jaw, the lower jaw, the eye. Let's see, pelvic fin, pectoral fin. So the pectoral fin tends to be more on the side. The pelvic fin tends to be down below. And if you think about it, pectoral, pelvis, right? Pectoral fin, pelvic fin. And the anal fin, again, usually the anus is right ahead of it. But that's the big parts of fish anatomy that we're going to look at in a minute here.
Here we have a fish,
And we know it's a cold water species because it has an extra small fin right there.
That are only found in cold water.
What's that fin called?
That is a
Adipose fin.
Adipose.
Hold it right up to the camera here so we can see the adipose fin. Show it real close.
It's right there.
That little tiny fin near the back, behind the dorsal fin. Yep.
If you see this line right here that goes along the fish that's a little darker, that's a lateral line. And sometimes fish can use that to help sense other fish that are around or prey because they'll have like they'll be able to sense it through it. Because,
Vibrations.
yeah. This is the gill plate here, and if we lift that up, sometimes
Ooh.
underneath are the gills. There.
The gill plate is also called the Aperculum.
Okay, so this is spine? Like right here?
What's that?
Isn't this like right here, like part of the spine? Like
Yeah,
inside?
you can probably see some of the spine inside there. They're pretty thin.
Yeah, and then scales. And then the tail fin. Did you already point out?
Caudal fin. Caudal, caudal fin.
Caudal fin is
Yep.
also called the tail fin. And then the eye.
Yep.
The
What about the
jaw.
fin on top?
The top fin is dorsal fin.
Dorsal fin. And the adipose fin is behind it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, yeah,
How about the bottom fins?
the bottom fins are this is the pelvic fin,
Okay.
and then shouldn't he have
The
another
anal fin towards the back.
Yeah, the anal fin. Shouldn't
there.
he have another fin right here?
Some fish do, some fish don't.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay.
So that fin on that smelt, that's a smelt. That fin is probably a pectoral fin. The pelvic fin is usually a little bit lower, like the pelvis is lower than your pectoral area in the human body.
yeah.
So yep,
Is that it?
yep, very good. So that's a cold water species because it has the adipose fin, right? Brendan, show him the shiner.
This is the shiner.
Yep.
Non-
Does it have an adipose fin?
No, it's a
No.
warm water species.
So that usually indicates warm water species.
And another cool thing that I saw is if you're able to hold it down somehow and you scrape it,
Going up.
well, if you can try to hold it down.
Nice.
You can use the scalpel if you need to.
Actually, I have an idea. Move it to the middle.
There you go.
Ugh,
Let me see.
that feels weird.
Yep. And hold your scalpel up. What are you getting on your scalpel there, Sophie?
Scales.
Yeah, show it right here, the camera. You can see she's removed the scales.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
You see it?
You can see the scales. Yep.
See it?
Very good. Okay, so this is an Atlantic salmon. And one of the things that we've been talking about is this little tiny fin back here. That fin is the adipose fin. That's the fin that cold water species like salmon and trout and smelts all have. Warm water species like our friend the giant bass don't have adipose fins. And cold water species typically need a minimum of 5 parts per million of dissolved oxygen. If dissolved oxygen, and that's the minimum for survival. If they're going to breed, they need 10 or more parts per million of dissolved oxygen. But you get below 5, salmon and trout aren't going to be in your water body. And that's why we call them cold water species, because cold water has more oxygen. So it's not just the cold water that they need the high oxygen levels that come with cold water. So this is an Atlantic salmon. Salmo salar is its name. In Maine, we also have what we call landlocked salmon. Those are the salmon that we catch in freshwater rivers. A landlocked salmon is Salmo salar. It's the same species. It's just adapted to living and staying in fresh water, and it breeds in tributaries that come into the lakes. These Atlantic salmon are what we call anadromous fish. Anadromous means they live in salt water and they come up into fresh water to breed. So this is a saltwater species, but it breeds in fresh water. The opposite of anadromous is catadromous. Catadromous fish live in fresh water and go out to the ocean to breed. And a great example of that is the American eel. Have you ever seen an eel? It looks like half snake, half fish. It's actually a fish. And it is catadromous. It lives in lakes and streams, and it goes out to the ocean to do its breeding. So anadromous, eels are catadromous. And the salmon can be landlocked. The smelt that we were looking at a minute ago, smelts are also landlocked. There are anadromous smelts that live in the ocean. They swim up into the rivers and breed. Some of them got stuck here and they live in fresh water all the time. Both of those are the same species. They're rainbow smelts. So that's Atlantic salmon. Did you pause it? All right. For comparison, this is a northern pike, an invasive species in Maine. One of the things that separates it from a chain pickerel, see how it has this sloped head right here? Chain pickerel, the mouth tends to be almost as wide as the head. It doesn't slope as much. But this is a chain pickerel. Notice there's no adipose fin. It just has a dorsal fin. Pike and pickerel are what we call lay-in-wait predators. What that means is they hang around in weedy areas in the cover, and they wait for their prey to swim by, and then they shoot out like a rocket and grab that prey. And if you look at the way this fish is adapted, do you see how the anal fin, the dorsal fin is slid way to the back, and you have the caudal fin. So you have really three powerful propulsion fins. This thing is built just like a torpedo. So it hangs out in the cover, and when prey comes along, it's able to accelerate and rocket out and attack that prey. A bass, on the other hand, is adapted differently. This is a cruiser type of fish. You notice the dorsal fin is not far to the back. The dorsal fin's up in the middle. This fish is designed to swim around the lake and just find its prey as it goes. It cruises. Okay? These are much more explosive. These are lay in wait. The other thing you'll notice about a lot of fish species, they tend to be dark on the top and light on the bottom. Does anybody know why? Owen?
It's a form of camouflage.
Camouflage. If a fish is dark, this is dark green on the top. When a prey is looking down, this is going to blend in with the bottom of the lake. And if the cruiser fish is above you and prey is down here looking up, the light color is going to blend in with the surface of the water and the sky. So dark on top, light on the bottom is very, very common in fish. Owen?
And if you're at the same level as the fish, the light from the top hitting the, from above hitting the top darker part, and the not having light on the bottom, not hitting the bottom, kind of having it flipped like that also kind of cancels it out and makes it harder to see.
So same thing here. Notice light bottom, dark top. That's all about camouflage.